This week, it's Double Interview Monday. First, we welcome Edward Tourinsky, founder and managing principal at DTS, to discuss what does DoD's CMMC requirements mean for American businesses. Then we will welcome Mike Leiborg, Chief Information Security Officer at Swimlane, to discuss unraveling the materiality mystery, a CISO's guide to SEC compliance. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Let's talk about something that's becoming increasingly important for enterprise companies worldwide, cyber risk management. Traditionally, cyber risk has been managed manually in silos, separate from the business's core operations. The future is about getting real-time risk insights benchmarked against your industry peers through automation. And CyberSaint's CyberStrong platform is leading the charge. CyberStrong is not just another point solution. It's a revolutionary platform. It's a quantified top-down risk approach where your unique cyber risks inform C-suite decision-making to identify your top 5 cyber risks and the controls to mitigate them. Sign up for your free cyber risk analysis by visiting securityweekly.com/cybersaint. High-value employees have become the path of least resistance and a key source of compromise for corporations. Attacks against executives can compromise their personal accounts, enable corporate breaches, and can even compromise their reputation, wealth, and physical security. Black Cloak understands that an executive's personal digital footprint is crucial to enterprise security. We provide concierge cybersecurity solutions tailored for executives, safeguarding their personal data, devices, and online presence. Experience peace of mind knowing that your team is protected with Black Cloak Digital Executive Protection. Secure your digital life with blackcloak.io. Visit us now at securityweekly.com/blackcloak. Enterprises today are using hundreds of SaaS applications. Are you reaping their productivity and innovation benefits, or are you lost in the sprawl? Enter Savvy Security. They help you surface every SaaS app, identity, and risk so you can shine a light on shadow IT and risky identities. Savvy monitors your entire SaaS attack surface to help you efficiently eliminate toxic risk combinations and prevent attacks. So go on, get savvy about SaaS and harness the productivity benefits. Fuel innovation while closing security gaps. Visit securityweekly.com/savvy to learn more. Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 347, recorded April 22nd, 2024. I am your host, Matt Alderman. Joining me for these interview segments today are my co-hosts. First, Mr. Jason Albuquerque. Hey, Jason.
How goes, Matt? I was telling you earlier, the Celtics and the Bruins are killing it right now, so fingers crossed we can keep that pace here with Boston sports.
Yeah, well, let's just hope the Rangers have a good season to marry last year's season. I'll take the baseball title. How's that?
There you go.
Also joining this week, Mr. Ben Carr. Hey, Ben.
Hey, Matt. Great to be with you guys again. It's fine Monday.
Yes. Did you survive all the rain this weekend?
I did. We actually didn't have too much. I was out. My son had a competition, so we were out in kind of West Texas doing a little shooting. But yeah.
Yeah, we got a lot of rain up here in the Fort Worth area, but we needed it because it's going to get dry and hot, so we might as well get green now.
That is true. So great time in the hill country, a lot of flowers, and yeah, we've had a lot of rain this year. It's been crazy.
Security Weekly listeners, save $100 on their RSA Conference 2024 full conference pass. RSA Conference will take place May 6th to May 9th in San Francisco and on demand. To register using our discount code, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC24 and use the code 54US or 54USEC Weekly. We hope to see you there. I will be there in Broadcast Alley with the Security Weekly team, so I hope to see you all there. On the evening of Monday, May 6, 2024, W2 Communications and Cyber Risk Alliance are bringing Cyber Tacos back to San Francisco. If eating free tacos, sipping on margaritas, and mingling with cyber professionals from all over the world sounds good to you, make sure to register to secure your spot. Visit securityweekly.com/cyber tacos to RSVP today. Founder and managing principal Edward Tourinsky leads DTS, an IT consulting, government contracting, technical remediation, and cybersecurity solution provider. He brings more than 2 decades of experience and expertise in cyber, consulting, management, and IT services. He is a seasoned educator, presenter, and established author, contributing subject matter expertise in the areas of compliance, program management, strategy and operations, human capital management, technology, cybersecurity, digital transformation, and leadership development to many noteworthy publications and conferences. Edward, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Thank you, Matt. Nice to be here.
So we're going to talk CMMC. Now, CMMC has been around for a while, and we've been talking about CMMC for 8 years-ish now, right? I mean, the promise of these requirements coming down from the federal government to better protect data. What's the latest? Because we've talked about it a lot, but we haven't seen a ton of movement or enforcement around CMMC up to date. So let's start with a little history.
So CMMC came out several years ago, as you said, under the Trump administration, and it was a way to audit the contracting community. The actual FAR clause came out in 2016 and required essentially contractors to be compliant with NIST 800-171 at the time. NIST has evolved since then. So every contractor signed the contract saying they were compliant. DoD did a little sleuthing and background check and found out less than 1% of DoD contractors were actually following NIST 800-171. So they came up with CMMC, modeled off after the CMMI, the ISO types of audit ability. And as soon as it came out, there was uproar across the community as well, this is craziness. So they've refined the program several times. They've put it out for public comment. That comment closed in February. So at this point in time, the DoD is looking to finalize this rule and start putting into contracts going in FY25. Kind of our tea leaves where everyone's predicting that end of this fiscal year is really when this will be finalized, and then it'll really start to be implemented in FY25.
Yeah, because I think the current version is actually a draft. It's like V2 draft. It's like been a draft forever, right? Because on the CyberSync side, we actually support the draft framework that hasn't been fully finalized, which has opened up all these like questions about, well, what's the final version going to look like? Should I even do anything with the version 2.0 draft, or is it going to substantially change?
It's not going to substantially change. DoD has vetted this pretty well. It's going to be exactly what it has been for the last couple of years. The Cyber AB has built a pretty good community of C3 PAOs. The Joint Surveillance Program going through DIBCAP has pushed through several contractors, so they know that the program does work. They know that small, medium, large-sized businesses can go through the program and get a 110 score, perfect score. So these things are rolling. We've actually seen DIBCAT picking up on their voluntary assessments. They're getting faster at them. They're getting more efficient. And there's a lot more contractors that have said, hey, look, if I'm going to invest this money, I want to go through the DIBCAT assessment to make sure that I'm compliant. And those will roll into CMMC level 2, essentially, when that program does come in full force here.
Now, Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, but CMMC being a maturity model, right? A maturity compliance model. There's different levels, correct? I mean, you're assessed on requirements based on a level of certification. I think there's like 3 different levels that you can be certified at. Can you talk a little bit about what those models are, what they mean for businesses, and a little bit about each level?
Yes. So there's 3 levels in CMMC. There was 5, now it's 3. So just to make everyone more confused. So level 1 is your base standard, security, and that's part of the base CFAR regulation that came out years ago, and it's 17, 15 controls. So it's basically secure your systems, turn on MFA, those basic things that everybody should be doing. And every contractor that has a contract with the federal government, not just DoD, is certifying that they're following these base rules, which is interesting because most of them don't know that those rules even exist. So CMMC level 1 is going to be self-certification. DoD is not going to spend time on it. They figure that you should be able to do it. You still are required to have an SSP, and so that if asked, you can hand it over. And then level 2 takes it up a massive level from 17 to 320 controls. There's the families are in there, but there's 320 controls that you'll be assessed against, and it is a massive undertaking. And this is where the fight's kind of been around the CMMC level 2. If you're going to put this in, any contract that has controlled unclassified information will have to have this requirement in it, which is pretty much everything. Really comes down to in the end. But they're really focusing on those major weapon system programs at this time. And that's why DoD ultimately wanted to audit the contracting group, because they saw our plans, our information sifting out. And interestingly enough, it goes so far down the supply chain. If you're able to collect a little bit of information on sheet metal from one contractor and then add it to a little bit of information from a schematic from another contractor, in the end, China can build a stealth fighter. They bought one from, there's some wreckage too, but they were able to put it all together and come up with this. So DoD knows this is happening, and they're trying to prevent our taxpayers' money going to waste, because we're spending lots of money on developing these programs and these weapon systems. But then it starts to spread out into the other contractors that are supporting finance, that are supporting acquisition, that are supporting IT, all these other programs also, as they go to it. And then there's level 3. Level 3 takes it up a notch. There's additional controls on top of that. At this point in time, if you're going to go to level 2 is where most of it will be. Some contractors will start, and most of those contractors already work in the high class environments. So it's not a huge stretch for them to go from 2 to 3 at this point, because they're already in the government, secret, top secret clouds.
And now organizations who store federal contract information and or controlled unclassified information need to be thinking CMMC, correct?
CMMC level 2, correct.
Now, level 2 and level 3 are the ones that you have to get certification against, because you said level 1 was self-assessment. Is that where the CP3AOs come in? Is level 2 and level 3 certification?
That is correct. Yeah, the C3PAOs come in and they will audit you against those assessment objectives and certify that you're meeting them.
And Ed, aren't there other types of certifying organizations that can come in and do readiness assessments before you go through and actually do a full certification? I thought there was another, like an RPO, a registered type certifier that can come in and do readiness assessments to prepare you for CMMC certification. Is that correct?
Essentially anybody can come and do a readiness assessment. Where the registered practitioners come in is that they have taken ethics and an oath. They've taken some training and education, and the AB is saying that these people should know what they're doing at this point. So it's kind of a checkbox certification that they have the correctly trained professionals. They're following code of ethics, and they can come in and give you this readiness assessment or gap assessment. But there's a lot of companies out there that say they do it, but really they should have that RPO certification from the Cyber AB to come in and do it for you. But then if they're coming in doing that and helping a contractor with their assessment, they cannot do the audit, just like in a financial situation. The people doing the finances can't audit it. People try, but I wouldn't recommend it.
The early days of PCI, when you went in and did the readiness assessment, then you were the QSA and you signed off on all the remediation work.
Exactly.
Yeah. Little conflict of interest there.
Just a tad, just a small little bit.
Now, so Ed, 300 plus, I think in version 3, there are some changes coming. And I think you told me the total control count is going to go to about 390. Can you describe some of the changes that are coming with V3 as kind of this finalization before implementation? Then we'll get into some of the implementation stuff.
So they're adding some new families to version 3, and this just recently came out. And so they're adding supply chain management to it. And then it's going to go from 320 assessment objectives to 300. I actually got it right in front of me. I don't want to get it wrong there. 390. And so they're actually taking the controls down to 95, just to confuse everyone. They're taking the families to 17. They're adding planning, system and service acquisition, supply chain risk management to it, which brings the controls up to 390 from 320. And the focus around here, where it seems the DoD is really looking at, is supply chain risk management, and that's where it comes down to. And this is where we see this starting to flow out into the general business community. It's you don't have to have a contract with DoD to be involved with someone that does have a contract with DoD. Even for us, for an example, we use the government cloud for Salesforce, because we want to make sure, and it's not their commercial cloud. We're also in Microsoft government cloud. But when we're vetting vendors, we have to ask very specific questions. And so, these are questions that are going to start to come out across the board from DoD contractors, because they want to know, where are you buying your software, where are you buying your hardware, and where are you buying your services.
Mhm.
And you're going to have to vouch for that supply chain that you have. Now, some of these things, they're not Staples.com. They're not going to, it's Staples. You're buying paper, not a big deal. But if you're exchanging information with another vendor for, any type of service, hardware, software, then you have to. And also, if you're complying with ITAR requirements, then there's a whole nother layer with the cabling, with the hardware. We're also looking at, we personally only use FedRAMP approved software solutions, and there's a lot out there. We go with medium is where is a base requirement. Sometimes contracts require high, but you can go to the FedRAMP marketplace, type in Salesforce, Google, Microsoft, whatever, Amazon. They do all have FedRAMP approved versions, but then you have to make sure that you're purchasing that correct version. Another example is our payroll and financial systems. They didn't have any FedRAMP approval, but they were providing us the system security plan and their SOC 2 Type 2 audit information. So those are questions that people are going to start to ask that no one will even thought about before. When you're interviewing a payroll provider, when you're interviewing banks have other regulations they have to follow also. But it's interesting, those questions are going to come out.
Yeah.
And so DoD contracts have to get smart on it. And it's amazing when you ask questions, hey, do you have an SSP? And they just stare at you like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
And how far do those tentacles go, right? We always talk about third party, fourth party. Do we get into fifth party? How far do the tentacles go to actually say you are under the umbrella of CMMC and you should at minimum do a self-assessment, if not more? Is it because you have CUI and you're working with maybe a third party to a government agency, or how far does that go?
So this is the great theoretical conversation that you can have about this. I would love to sit down and have some of those tacos and margaritas and have this discussion with you guys.
This is the rabbit hole, right, Ed? This is the rabbit hole you go down.
Yeah, and I was in an academic setting, and one of the questions came up is, hey, we have phone numbers, emails, and names of people in our organization. Is that considered CUI? Like, where does this end?
Mhm.
And do they have to protect the phone roster and lock it up in a drawer? And I mean, this could be controversial, but my thing is, use common sense. Like I said, I'm not going to ask Staples for their SSP. We're buying paper from them. To me, it's, do they have access to sensitive information? And you can stop it at yourself. And this is part of what DoD is also saying with the big boys, the top 100. Do they really need that information? If they don't, do not give it to them. You have it secured, you have it kept up. Don't give it to them. So it's to me, it combines that thought process of zero trust. Don't let anybody in that you don't know. Give access, and then need to know, which is more on the security side of it. When we came up back in the day, we didn't have computers, we had paper. So they were all in filing cabinets, and depending on the information, it was either in a building that was secure, behind doors that were secure, in a cabinet that was secure. And I think of digitally the same way. So that's the rabbit hole where I go to it. If it's that locked up, I'm not gonna walk out with it and be like, here you go. But then you have things that you have sitting in your HR office that it's behind a door that's maybe not locked and it's in a cabinet.
Well,
And
Ed,
then
I
you
think the
go ahead.
complexity of that though is right. It's certainly easy to understand the locked cabinet and the need to know access is very easy to control in the physical realm, right? But as you start to get more
Mhm,
into the digital side, it becomes a lot more open. And then when you're merging, I think, when Jason, you were talking about third party risk, that's something I always
mhm,
try to hone in on is, you're implementing something and using an AI model. Where does that model go? How does it extend? Like, does your third party, are they actually hosting that model themselves, or is that model actually hosted in a third party to them? So
Uh-huh.
that chain
yes.
becomes really difficult to walk really quickly. And that's where I think this is going to become challenging as we start to think about the actual implementation in a
Mhm.
non-physical realm.
Yep.
Exactly. And that those were where the tentacles go of wanting to share the information and provide it so you can use tools such as AI or have federated environments where we have identity access across multiple ERPs and enterprises. And then how do we link that back together? And you know, to their the DoD, they've been doing this for a while. They are sharing information amongst intel agencies and Homeland Security, and they're able to segment it. Um, it's going to be, I think, a new and a harder concept for the commercial. They don't understand it, and there's a lot of companies that will say, "Well, I don't have access to any information. It's not my problem." But as AI is coming on board, data standardization coming on, access to information to make it easier, it's a very interesting dilemma that I don't know if I have the answer to right now. Um, and over the next 5 years, I think it's developing, and academia is having these conversations. I was sitting with PhDs and great minds, and they're saying that AI is already here and it needs to be dealt with. And the DoD is saying, hold off on AI. We're not going to turn it on until we have control over it. So there's a lot of different mindsets around there, and where does security end? But I think that rabbit hole is eventually going to go down to your local shops. I think the new buyers are asking the same questions. Am I going to give you my credit card? How are you going to ensure that you're not going to get it stolen? Because changing all my credit card numbers is a huge pain for me. So I want to have confidence that if I'm giving you any type of information that I think is sensitive, that you're doing something, you have some type of certification, you have some type of level of confidence that you're going to maintain my information correctly. So I really see a change in mindset and security over the next couple years.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
there's no doubt that it's hitting the smaller businesses. I mean, we have Electric Boat right up the road from me. I have the Naval War College across the bridge from me. And our local small businesses here who deal with Electric Boat and deal with the War College, and they're already going down the path. And some of them are a little scared right now on how they're going to be able to obtain CMMC, right? So I, I know it's going to hit at that level, no doubt about it. So if I'm a small business owner, right? And the entirety of my revenue is Electric Boat or the War College. Talk to me about what this assessment is going to look like for me. What do I have to plan for? Obviously, there needs to be some scoping involved to figure out where the scope of the data boundary is, or some analysis gathering. I'm sure there's going to be remediation that's part of it. And just talk to me about what that approach looks like. Maybe what the tail is, about how long can these small businesses expect to be being assessed, and just what that overhead looks like for a CEO or a small business owner.
I know you're trying to pin me down on this number question. We'll get there in a minute. Um, so the first part of it is scoping. I think that is the initial part, is the scoping of the conversation, and the what is the data boundary? What are these other areas? And this is some things that small businesses don't even consider. And I was thinking, oddly enough, and I'm not related to this morning, I was thinking about how did we get to the situation where I talk to a lot of small and medium sized business and I have zero budget for this.
Mhm.
And and then I don't know if I have the right answer, but I come to a part of the conclusion is that we've made it so easy for a small business to set up a cloud environment with some emails, with some server space and file storage, that they just did it themselves. And so really their IT costs are the number of GoDaddy accounts they have, number of Microsoft or Google accounts, and they bolt on some things. And they never thought about it. I was thinking back in the day, every small business I worked for, they had on-prem servers, Microsoft Exchange servers, and everybody had an IT person on staff. And then over the years, that IT person has gone away. And so, interestingly enough, on the tail on this one, you're going to need to have someone supporting you. If you're going CMMC level 2, you're going to have MSSP, you're going to have to do it in house. There's a cost to that a lot of small businesses currently don't have. The
Yeah, and I
second,
think,
go ahead.
yeah, just Ed, just quickly though, I think there's the baseline of CMMC level 1, which most people could probably do themselves without external. It's really the jump from level 1 to level 2 where there's a big gap from a resource perspective, right?
100%. Level 1, I wholeheartedly want people to do themselves. Learn about it, understand it, and then once you realize that it took you, 60 hours to be compliant with level 1, and now you got to add, 300 more assessment objectives on top of that, you'll understand the difference between level 1 and level 2. Um, and the remediation of those environments. I'm not going to save anyone, but the bigger companies, Amazon, Google, AWS, they have approved environments and they take a lot of that shared responsibility matrix on them. So one recommendation is move to the cloud, move into these environments that are approved by the DoD, that are FedRAMP approved. It takes a lot off of your plate from there. And then work with a company that can help you with the policies, procedures, um, and you're going to have configuration control board meetings. You're going to have governance. You're going to have to maintain it. I mean, part of this is making sure your systems are patched. We, for example, get information from NSA, we get it from CISA, we get it from DoD about vulnerabilities on 0 day that have to be remediated. So these are ongoing things. There's threat identification, threat hunting, that go into it. And so it does get quite complex. The big companies, they have it licked. They've been doing this for years, and they have budgets for it. It's really that, small, in our business, small is around, 30 million up to mediums up to 250 million, that have been doing the IT on a shoestring budget. And now their rates are already set. They've already sold this to the government at the rates because in 2016, the government said, "Are you doing it?" You said yes, and we set your rates up. So now the DoD's like, "You already said you were doing it."
Yeah.
And so now your rates are set for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. You have to put this cost into it. So it's definitely a journey. I have lots of conversation with CEOs. I said, first thing you need to know is that you need to set aside $100,000 just to get yourself to where you need to be. And then there's going to be a tail based upon who you're going to have on your side doing it, if you're going to outsource it to somebody else, and you're going to have that budgeted. If you don't have that in your budget, you need to go back to your board, you need to go back to your CFO, and you need to figure out how you're going to get it into your budget. Because if you try to do it on a shoestring budget or you try to do it yourself, you are not going to pass.
Yeah, I
And
would say that
and
that
it's going to be
$100,000 number is likely extremely low, right? Just when you look at the head count and the support and like everything that needs going to need to happen. I mean, I just question what the barrier to entry and what this does to agility, right? Smaller organizations are going to find it really hard to compete based upon these requirements. Not saying they shouldn't be done. Like I'm all in favor of this. It's just, when you look at a company that's doing 30 million in ARR, like they're not usually thinking about like all the costs associated with the security controls and process. And so I've talked to a lot of startups about this, and it's like, when do you hire the right staff to be able to support this? It's difficult. It's going to be a challenge.
But the risk on the other side is the companies like I was talking about, Ben, their sole annual recurring revenue is DoD or a DoD, level
Yeah,
company,
agreed.
right? So,
And they're going to have a really hard time, right?
yeah,
I agree that they're going to need to do it, and I'm not saying they shouldn't, right? Like
yeah.
don't parse that as, hey, we need to lessen security. Like, you guys know me, like I'm always for we should do the right thing for the right reasons, but there's overhead, right? And so that becomes a challenge. It becomes almost a barrier to entry in some cases, and some people may decide not to do business with the DoD. And so then you get larger and larger organizations where they become more inflexible, right, about what they can do and how fast they can move and be agile. And so there are trade-offs to look at it in this.
Okay.
And and combine that, like, this isn't the only thing, right? Like if you're going down this road and you're a SaaS-based provider, you're probably doing FedRAMP, right? You're doing other things, and so
Yeah.
like it's almost as like the duplicity here of a lot of these things, because a lot of the controls, I'm sure, are exactly the same. Like it offers benefits, you can probably do them, but it also is like, why don't we have one program? Like why
And it's not gonna end either. It's not like you
Yeah.
get certification and then yeehaw, I passed the
You're
exam.
done, yeah.
Graduated college. That's not how it goes, right? I mean, there's going to be monitoring of that compliance. I don't know if it's annually, Ed, or I don't know how often that cadence is, but they're going to have to continue to manage this and ensure.
And that's the misinterpretation, right? Like a lot of people hear this, and I've run this down with FedRAMP many times, right? Where people think, oh, we get FedRAMP certified. Like, no, it's a continual compliance program.
Yeah, that's right.
Correct.
What is that?
It is continued.
What is that?
And so Ben, to answer your question, I say $100,000 because usually the CEO falls out of the chair and says, "I'm not doing this." And so that 100,000 gets them to grasp that this isn't something that's going to cost me 5K, 10K.
Yeah.
And once they wrap their heads around that and they start to understand it, as you said, they're gonna be more willing. And I've had some CEOs say, "Well, I'm just not going to work with DoD anymore."
Yeah.
But part of what I say to them is the Department of Energy is going to follow suit. Homeland Security is going to follow suit. The Veterans Administration is going to follow suit.
It's going to be
They're
federal
all
agencies, right? It'll apply across every. You won't do business with the federal government, and then what will happen from that? It'll then apply. Like states will try to start adopting it, right? It's a cascading event. Like it's the right controls. It is the right stuff to do. We could debate whether you could eliminate some pieces and parts, or they're redundant, right? PCI has been a problem for years about having stuff that I consider fairly legacy and not very helpful. And so could you eliminate it, or could it be done differently? Sure. But at the end of the day, you've got to have a good program in place. And this gets at the heart of that. Like, but what's that cost, and what's the impact to an org?
Yeah, and I think there's a balance between maturity from level 1 to level 2 in the DoD. For the civilian agencies, there might be an interim step, right? I mean, there used to be 5 levels, right, Ed? And so, maybe on the other agencies, maybe there is an interim step, because that's going to put a huge burden on a lot of these vendors trying to get into the federal space or trying to keep contracts in the federal space.
Yes, I agree. I think there could be a balance here, and if you look at the standards the VA's put out in Homeland Security, it doesn't rise to that CMMC level 2 area. And then Jason, to answer your question, it is an annual. You have to do an annual self-review assessment, and every 3 years a C3PAO has to come in and look at you. Now there's questions on whether you have to have monthly reporting, weekly reporting, quarterly reporting, and what is an assessor going to say about those type of things. And everyone has their recommendations, but at a minimum, you have to have your annual audit. You come back in, you got to have your paperwork. It has to be up to date. And I would recommend, if you're going to spend the money, do it right. Have your controls being managed properly. What are you responsible for? What is your MSSP responsible for? What is your cloud service provider responsible for? And maintain it on at least a monthly basis. Because, just like back when I was in the Army, the day before inspection is when we go back and figure out everything we had to fix. That's not how you want to do this, because the consequences of getting hacked or leakage or losing it and having to report that, it's just a reputational damage. And there's a million surveys out there about the cost that it takes to remediate an environment that has been hacked is 10 times the cost if you would have just maintained it. So a lot of these breaches are just simple patches, simple things. Hackers are lazy. They want to get in the easiest way possible.
Ed, what I took away from this is, if you're doing business with the federal government or want to, you better be prepared for CMMC V3 by the end of this year.
Right.
Awesome. Ed, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Thanks. Nice talking with you all.
With that, we're going to take a quick break and then welcome Mike Leiborg from Swim Lane.